Good day, everyone! Last time, we talked about conditionals and modals. This session, we will tackle about the literary elements. Our most essential learning competency is to analyze literature as a means of understanding and changing values in the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Let's talk about the literary elements. The literary elements is divided into five parts. The first part is the plot, which covers the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution, followed by the character, which has the three divisions: the protagonist, the antagonist, and the conflict. Next is the setting, that talks about the time and the place in the story, followed by the theme, which gives us the idea about the story, and lastly is the dialogue, that gives the narration of the characters. Let's now proceed to a plot. Plot is a literary term used to describe the events that make up a story or the main part of a story. Also, a plot holds different purposes, like it focuses attention on the important characters and their roles in the story. This is because it motivates the characters to affect in the story and connects the events in an orderly manner. So let's find out how a plot works. We have the plot mounting, which is the structure or organization of events that make a fictional story. The first part of the structure is the exposition. This is the beginning of the story that introduces the characters, setting, and conflict, followed by the rising action, the events before the climax, where the characters attempt to solve the problem but they fail. The next structure is the turning point of the plot mounting, which is the climax, where the greatest suspense or action is happening, followed by the fourth structure, which is the falling action, where the actions and events that occur after the climax. Lastly is the resolution. This is the end of the story where the conflicts or problems are being solved. And to give you a deep more understanding about its structure, we will discuss it using the story entitled God Sees the Truth But Waits by Leo Tolstoy. There was once a merchant from Vladimir named Ivan Dmitrich Aksionov. Despite of the bad dream of his wife, he still pursued his plan. On his way to Nizhny Fair, he met another merchant and had some tea with him. This is the exposition of the story, where the part is the usually near beginning, in which the characters are introduced and the background is explained or described, as well as the setting. The next day, he was accused and arrested because the merchant who was with him had been killed. In spite of his claim that he was innocent, Aksionov was imprisoned in Siberia, where he became more prayerful and religious, for he believed that God knows the truth. That made him gain the trust of convicts as well as the prison authorities. This is the rising action of the story, where the central part of the story during which various problems arise after a conflict is introduced. After 26 years of imprisonment, Aksionov met Makar Semyonik, who revealed himself as the real murderer of the merchant. On that night, Aksionov attempted to kill Makar by stabbing him as a revenge to his sacrifices. This is meant to be the moment of the highest interest and emotion. leaving the reader wondering what is going to happen next. When Aksionov heard Makar sobbing and asked forgiveness for what he has done to him, he too began to weep and told Makar, "God will forgive you." This is the result of the actions of the main characters or put forward to occur where events and complications begin to resolve. Aksionov started realizing that if he just listened to his wife as she told her bad dream that his hair was seen turned into gray. And after the confession of Makar, the police authority ordered a release for Aksionov, but he was dead already. This is the conclusion at the end of a story, which may occur with either a happy or a tragic ending. Setting is the author's element used to influence the reader's imagination. It talks about the time when the story takes place and the place where the story takes place. The story of The God Sees the Truth But Waits happened in Russia. The character is a person, animal, or object that plays an important role in the plot of the story.
In other words, characters are the whole reason for any story. They can be used to teach a lesson, to educate, to entertain, and even to persuade depending on the purpose of the author for the storyline. The first conflict is the man versus man, in which two characters have opposing desires or interests. This typical scenario is a conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist. The second conflict is the man versus nature. In this type of conflict, the character is tormented by natural forces such as storms and animals. The third conflict is the man versus self. This conflict develops a protagonist's inner struggles that may depend on a character's trying to decide between good and evil or overcome self-doubts. The fourth and last conflict is the man versus society. In this type of conflict, a character must take on society itself and not in a single person. The character stands at odds with societal norms and realizes the necessity to work against these norms.
The next element of a literary is the dialogue. It is the conversation between two or more people or characters in a work of literature. Lastly is the theme, which is the central idea of a story and is woven all the way through the story. And the theme of the story entitled God Sees the Truth But Waits is that God knows His plan, the always best for us, and what we should do is to encounter and effort. And those are the 5 literary elements. By that, thank you for listening to my presentation and I hope you enjoyed it. This is Teacher Reggie signing off.